right, and here we are today. We're back on the podcast. Happy New Year. We have a Zanin Lindsay and Alvaro Franco. How are you both doing today?
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Doing good also.
Awesome. So here we are, Uptown Films Podcast. We are a podcast made for filmmakers, film lovers, cinephiles, those working in the industry, film workers, we could say, who live in northern New York City, so Harlem, Washington Heights, Inwood, Bronx, Mount Vernon, Yonkers. Can you each share your connection to the Uptown cinema landscape?
Sure. I guess I'm the exception for now because you could call me Eastern New York City, but my connection to Uptown was during the 15 years that I spent there as like a Bronx resident, as a member formerly of the Bronx Filmmakers Collective, and also living in Throgsneck specifically while I was a freshman at the City College of New York. And I'm still, I guess, an alumnus of the Ghetto Film School. So, you know, I'm maintaining some connection plugged into there. And of course, I support and always advocate for the Bronx having more of more love from and recognition as an independent cinema outpost, and more recognition just beyond the usual geographic landmarks like Yankee Stadium or like the South Bronx. It's like there's more diversity, and that's actually what I tried to showcase in my last notable short film that I filmed.
We're going to get into that. Thank you.
As for myself, born and raised in the Bronx, mostly I would say the High Bridge area for sure. But I've been all over throughout my youth as far as like, High Bridge, Mount Eden area, over by Gun Hill Road.
Oh,
area.
wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I used to live there briefly during, I want to say like middle school, high school era. That was a good time. And then back to High Bridge. Oh, and I almost forgot Hunts Point. I used to live
Okay, you're on the point.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, I was at the point. It didn't look like how it is now. And
Yeah.
I go there now, it's like, oh my God, like what is happening here? I mean, kind of cool. But
The inspiration point there, they've done so much development.
yeah, no, the development is really crazy. And I stopped by this one coffee shop, Buggy Down Grind.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Majora Carter owns it.
Yeah. I was like, I like what she's doing over there. So, been here, kind of doing my thing, and it's been good time.
Yeah, so we're neighbors. Also, I mean, I grew up in the High Bridge area. I'm on the Concourse area now. I guess you could say closer, Morrisania, but
Yeah,
it's terrific being in the Bronx. But yeah, the development is crazy. It's seeing a lot of, I think New York City, we're leading now in terms of homelessness, but we have so much development coming. So it's very interesting changes to see. So here we are, January 2025. Happy New Year. Can you share essentially not only how are your holidays, but any major updates, professional or personal, you'd like to share from 2024? Also, like any films you'd like to share that you saw, anything of that nature?
Well, for myself, I would say quite a lot of updates actually. So I just recently opened up a studio in Industry Park called 208 Creative Studios. It's the brainchild of myself and my partner, Jerry Cotto Jr.
Awesome.
And the inspiration for that just really came down to us wanting to build not just a studio space that we can design custom sets where filmmakers, would like to shoot at in the world, but is really hard to either film in, or maybe it costs a lot of money to try to figure it out. Like, for instance, one of the first sets that will be done by January is an elevator set. And just really like being able to like pull apart the walls and giving people that sort of like soundstage efficiency, but just like accessible at the indie level. And then my other vocation, ProCam USA, which is a cinema rental equipment company that I part-time at. Well, senior part-time rental tech there. We also moved our location to Industry City. So our two businesses are right next to each other.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah,
Smart.
it's really exciting because it really broadens the way in which we could assist filmmakers and creatives in like creating content. So, Procam USA, which is an amazing rental company that I've had the pleasure of not only working with, but working for, and we're just trying to like give people tools to tell their stories. And me being a Bronx filmmaker, everything in what I do is surrounded around community. And so I feel like that mixed with Procam's ethos has really like found a perfect like merger. And yeah, so I'm excited to see how that plans out in 2025.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, and congratulations on your own space. I know, like, we've talked about that in the past. I was like, hey, I'm looking to get my space here. You want to, like, I was like, hey, man, timing's not right, whatever. I was like, hey, I understand. And so congrats again. And where is Industry City? Because as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, I have a feeling I know where that is. But can you tell our listeners, where is Industry City?
Yeah, so Industry City is the name of the industrial park that's located in the neighborhood of Sunset Park, and so just south of Barclays Center. And because I live right next to the D train, it's literally just that one train straight down.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No transfers.
Yeah, no transfers, no nothing, just a nice ride with an actual seat, and then one block from that, and you're there. And I think what I really enjoyed about what I've seen there is the various different creatives, businesses, and artists that are like working together, and of course, like Japan Village. Like, come on, like I'm gonna go there for my rice cakes and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a nice place, and I'm excited for it because I've never been in a situation to really do something like this as a first time business owner. So yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Alvaro, any updates? How are your holidays? I know you have a film you completed recently. It was screening, I believe, was it in the International Puerto Rican Film Festival?
That's correct.
Awesome.
It's been the most high-profile festival that we had the opportunity to screen at, and it was a really good turnout. And I appreciated everyone that showed up, and I thought it was a great way to kind of cap the festival run that the project had had. And I think it was also a nice segue into a sort of hiatus that I'm taking at the moment to focus more on the screenwriting side of the craft, so that I can recalibrate, find out or rediscover what inspired me to get into the game, and from that see if any potential, once a solid draft is finished, any potential investors come around and agree to take a look at it and maybe finance it, or at least pass it on to other eyes in the industry. And and at the same time, if you just take more time to, I guess, physically detach yourself from the more hectic side of production and just focus on the just as intense but more creative part of your brain, to focus on the story and the characters, it gives you a chance to not only reflect but think about what are less time-consuming and less physically intensive projects that can make just as much as of an impact, and it might and ultimately result in something that still can be screened, but without the pressure of packing a theater with the audience, or something less conventional, such as a museum or projected on the side of a wall, or just a typical non-commercial venue, like a gallery or an installation.
Or even a sidewalk film festival, and also Maysville's Documentary Center in Harlem. They do sometimes outdoor screenings, as the blocks in Harlem are much wider than the ones in the Bronx.
So that's like what I'm eyeing for this still life that I was telling Zanin earlier that I was trying to develop as part of a competition that's soliciting entries in that regard, but also just for my own portfolio. And holidays were kind of a time for myself to retreat and rewatch some movies that got a lot of circulation in my old family abode when was yet to become a teenager.
Mm.
I rewatched, because it came out in 4K, I rewatched The Sixth Sense,
Oh, okay, awesome.
which I hadn't seen in over 10 or 15 years. And I rewatched the first Gladiator. And I think out of the contemporary films that came out for this, for this season, I would recommend, I was really impressed by Conclave, and I was really impressed by Maria. So those are two recommendations that I would give to your listeners at the time being. And then, of course, my own still life project when Savannah comes out in February.
Could you tell us more about your short film? Still life?
Well, the most I'll do you one better. I'll tell you about both.
Sure.
The most recent one that did screen at the Puerto Rican Heritage Film Festival was a comedy that I made last year, 2020. Well, excuse me,
Yeah, no, 2 yet.
almost 2 years ago, and had been kicking around New York City for a while, and that one we may try to find an additional distributor for, because right now it's on a Queens-based streaming platform. I can't remember the name, but I'll happily share my social media for your viewers at the end of this, so that they can find out exactly which platform. And that was it was a comedy kind of made in service of the filmmaker, made to be relatable by artists of any craft, because it was a very like French New Wave styled comedy with a lot of fourth wall breaking and voiceover, speaking to the anxiety of how to follow up your last project with something just as meaningful to your audience, and at the same time not lose your audience while you're trying to figure out where your own headspace is. So I figured that comedy and then something in the vein of French New Wave might be appealing. And even if it didn't, it was totally fine, because we should give ourselves room to fail, because as long as we're taking a creative risk. I thought it turned out okay. And it made me enthusiastic about now, instead of focusing on tone and humor and composition, I want to incorporate more movement in the next, I guess, narrative project that I developed. Which leads into this new thing that I was briefly chatting about earlier with the still life, because ironically, that's meant to be a very static project. I think I'm going to do more work around the audio side of that, and seeing how I can incorporate different voices of an unseen audience into just this one still life outside of a yet to be determined movie theater.
That makes sense. And the namesake of the film, Still Life, I would definitely understand and appreciate that potentially being future screening at a museum.
Right.
That would make sense. And in terms of movie theaters, we're all connected to the Bronx. I must ask, again from last year, how do you both feel about the Concourse Multiplex Cinema 161 closing in May of last year?
I mean, personally, it was I didn't think it would hurt me as much until I did make it an effort to get there for the last day. At this point, I don't remember what the movie was. I think it could have been some kind of like sci-fi movie or something like that. But I took my mom. We went to go see, and it was just, I guess, horroring in a way of like how empty it was. I had very fond memories of running up and down those stairs, just being a total like brat and stuff, like rolling under the divider ropes and even some of the arcade games, and I think just remembering all the families, like there were so many families, so many kids, and even upstairs, I remember the mole ninja guy selling his like shurikens and knives and katanas and stuff, and just all of that, and it's just all gone. Like, it made me sad. It made me really sad, because it's, I don't know if it is indicative of the struggling communities and income and people not being able to invest or even spend their money on leisures, and they're just constantly working, and or being pushed out, or just cultural differences in how we consume media. It's hard for me to say that any one of those things are the main factors to it. But I just remember that, when I was there and leaving, and we did have the last movie, security was like slowly like ushering us out, and there were several people that like myself, that took videos and stills of the theater before we left those doors for the last time. So yeah, it is heartbreaking.
Definitely is, and I must ask, as the executive director of Bronx Independent Cinema Center, that was my childhood theater, and definitely must ask if you saved that media from your last day. I've asked members in the organization to also share that with me, and we do have that. So it's for our, I'll make a plug here, our History of Cinema project, so focusing on past cinemas in the Bronx. So we've done four episodes so far, and they should be coming out this month.
You're watching Uptown Films, so keep watching films Uptown.
Hey there, I'm Nicole Tay, and you're watching Uptown Films.
Hi, my name is Sean Senavarati, and you are listening to the Uptown Films Podcast.
Hi, this is Alvaro Franco, and keep making films Uptown, and please keep showing Uptown some love.
Hi, my name is Zanin Lindsay, and you're watching Uptown Films.
Hey, this is Christopher Hall. Thanks so much for listening to the Uptown Films Podcast.
One at a time. But yeah, definitely painful, and shot some B-roll of that last year, and just going back, even a couple of my board members, one from Long Island, one from Brooklyn, is like, so this is really like it. And I'm like, yeah. So there's no cinemas. Arguably, I think in 100 square blocks from go from Bay Plaza down to Harlem, Magic Johnson. But thank you for sharing.
No, for sure. I mean, again, it's also synonymous with the closure of Barnes & Noble in the Bronx, and that was like one of the last big bookstores. So I don't know whether if that means there's a war against like arts and culture and stuff like that in the Bronx, or we gotta look better at our what's happening to our socioeconomic programs that are helping people. But on a positive note, like yeah, man, that's where I saw like Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Oh yeah, good memories. I was gonna ask afterward. Any good memories?
Yeah, Final Fantasy Spirits Within. That was like really dope. Spider-Man, Digimon, like the first movie. Yeah, just a lot of great movies that I remember seeing there. So, it's definitely gonna forever be in my heart. So good times.
Well, thank you for sharing, Alvaro.
I didn't honestly. I guess my immediate family didn't go to the movie theater that often when I was growing up because of the lack of leisure. I guess you could say the lack of income, personal income, to go and see movies frequently as a form of leisure.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were more, I think, appreciative of the advent of Netflix when they were still doing mail-in envelopes with the physical discs as a way to catch up from movies that were in theaters like 6 months prior. But I think that extended all the way up until college when I guess I started to venture out to catch. I think that was right around or a little after the time when the Academy expanded the number of Best Picture nominees from 5 to 10, which is ridiculous.
Talk about it. What do you think about that? Your face. You're like, for those like listening.
It's one of
Alvaro
those.
just shook his head like.
It's one of those decisions that are made by a body of authority who don't realize that their decisions affect people that actually do take advantage of these services. I think it's a decision made by boneheads that don't actually have to worry about how much they spend at the movie theater or when they can afford to go to the movie theater. They're just like, fuck it, we all get screeners at the end of the day, or we actually made the film, so we don't need to rewatch it. But for me, it's just there's too much life experience to get out there to like actually sit down or unless I was getting paid to do it over the course of a week. Sure, I would check out a film every day or maybe once every 2 days. But for like a working class person during those times, and especially one that didn't have stable employment, it wasn't really it was almost a no brainer to wait until I could afford the home entertainment releases of those films. But yeah, in general, unless you're getting paid to do it or you have a lot of free time on your hands, it's kind of unreasonable to expect someone of limited means to go and check out all 10 films that are on the roster for that year. But once I guess I got more stable employment, that's when I like nowadays. Now that's when I can afford to, if not 4-year consideration screenings or industry screenings, then I can actually spend some of my own pocket money to check out something that really, if the story really interests me, I'll go and see it in while it's still in the theatrical run. And cut back to when I was an undergraduate at City College. The one time that I went and invited people to come with me to that multiplex at Concourse Plaza was actually in support of a locally shot indie production at the time, which was Gun Hill Road.
Oh, yeah, the 2011 one, I believe.
Yes, yep. And the director, Rashad Ernesto Green, was there in person for a Q&A afterwards, because I think, you might remember this, Greg, but there used to be a thing called the Bronx Week Film Festival around that time. And sadly, it's
film festivals that used to be going on in the Bronx that faded away between like the late 90s to like 2011, actually.
So right on the tail end. Yeah. So thankfully I caught it just, I guess, before it dissolved. Yeah. And I was struck by the fact that there was an actual multiplex devoted, or at least agreeing to one day of the weekend host a local filmmaker with his independent film that made it a point to film in the Bronx, and also see the filmmaker up close, and no entourage, no security, just be like, see him in the lobby, and then afterwards we just ask him a question. But yeah, that was my most probably standout memory from the theater while I was in operation. I think, unfortunately, afterwards, because I had friends that lived more towards the North Bronx, we would just go to Bay Plaza.
Bay Plaza, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the history of that cinema. And of course, it's a shame that it closed. My theory about another reason, my theory for a potential reason behind its closure was the pandemic. Unfortunately, I think movie theaters, even if they are part of a chain, like unless the neighborhood really came out to support it in the wake of the lockdown and after things opened up a bit, it kind of contributed to a demise.
Yeah, I kind of like letting go certain harsh feelings toward it, because now, developing an organization and where we lobby and we're reaching out to people, elected officials, theater owners, you get to see just how petty and minimal everything is. It's like talking to the leasing manager, which is a very nice gentleman. I'm not going to say his name. He said, "Hey, I am doing everything in my power to bring in a new, a new theater, someone to rent the space or lease the space out for a number of years by October." And that was October of last year, 2024. And we spoke in June, so just right after they closed. And I said, "What about if we did like monthly pop-ups?" Because I'd done my research, and as you had said, they used to do these things with other organizations and certain festivals. And even in speaking with the Dominican Film Festival this year, and even folks at the International Puerto Rican Film Festival, it's like, "Hey, we're looking for venues in the Bronx. Does your organization have a space?" "Not yet, but I can connect you with people." So speaking with the leasing manager, I want to get something by October. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet. But at the time, I'm like, let's do monthly pop-ups. Let's do something, because we can't afford to take on a lease yet. We're not there. We're years away from that. But I do have folks who are interested in my network, who would be interested in also facilitating certain events at a negotiable rate. And that didn't happen. So, and I'll go on the record, my board, when I told them this about, "Hey, this theater's closing," my chairman was like, "Well, we can't take that space. We can't afford it." And I said, "We can't do that, but at least we can make a big stink of this and see if we can leverage this news in the media, not just to our advantage, but to inform people like, hey, this could have closed." And we did this in street interviews. And some people said, "Oh, I think it closed because of the pandemic." And I'm like, maybe, but they just completed renovations in 2022. So when my board member says, "Oh," my chairman on my board says, "We can't take that space," I'm like, yeah, we can't take that, but we should inform people that this space isn't going anywhere. So it could be an Alamo, it could be another large chain that comes in and says, "You know what's missing? This," and that'll change it all. So it's definitely disappointing. It's definitely harsh. But seeing our borough president say, this space needs to open up again, and she's very eloquent. She has a gift for gab or what have you. But nothing's happened yet. And what I'm seeing here is it makes it so, I guess the operative word is hollow, is that there's a lot of noise and then it dissipates and then that's it. And now here we are a few months away from a 1-year anniversary of it being closed, and it's like, what's happening? And even people are like, well, what are you doing? I don't know, but we have done outdoor screenings. We do workshops, so we're doing everything we can. And I would also love to, maybe do an anniversary screening of Gun Hill. But it's definitely something that hurts, because I remember going on dates there, going as a kid there, and it just felt nice that it was nearby. Was it the cleanest? No. Was it, the safest? At times, no. But it was my childhood theater because it was in my neighborhood, and it definitely sucks that it fucking sucks. Because now I can drive up to Bay Plaza. Hey, Pop, my cousin, hey, I need to borrow the car. Or I can take the train down to, one of several cinemas. So it's just the gravity of the situation where you have to tell people, similar to the Barnes & Noble, there's only one bookstore, or there are no bookstores, or there's only one theater. But realistically, when a theater closes in your neighborhood, you have no theaters. So, but thanks for sharing on that. Quick rapid fire. We like doing this with guests. Just a few questions. What is your favorite place, if you have one, to shoot in the Bronx? For film or photography, what's your favorite place to shoot in the Bronx?
Can we say at least one place where we'd like to
start? Oh, sure, yes. If you'd like to shoot, yes. Yeah. And if you haven't shot there yet, that's fine too. Thank you.
I could give a mixture. I guess one place that became a favorite was in my penultimate short after the equinox, where I had written it to be a local park, but I wasn't sure exactly where. And then after I did a location scout at Van Cortlandt Park and discovered a spot that was deeper inside, which is an area called the Grand Central Stones. Funnily enough, I immediately decided, okay, that's where the introduction is going to be set, and that I think is not just one of my proudest moments, but a moment I'm hoping for the Bronx audience was a moment of pride for them, or even a moment of discovery where they figured out, I didn't know that this even existed.
I love that
in Van Cortlandt Park. So that became a favorite spot. And then two locations that I'd like to film if given the chance would be a community garden in the South Bronx. I forgot the exact name of it, Lord help me, but it's right off of 149, Grand Concourse between 149th and 161st, close to a restaurant that's been there. It's like Sam's Barbecue, or something. It was featured on Anthony Bourdain's Outer Boroughs episode. I forgot.
It's across the street from McDonald's, I think.
Oh, yeah, it's like around that area. But I remember just being there at sunset one time to visit a friend who was cultivating her own vegetables in that garden, and I thought that the magic hour quality was just really.
Sam's, yeah.
It was close by. And I remember just taking a short walk from that spot to the garden, and I was just really struck by the quality of the light. And I was like, man, if I had a really good high resolution or even 4K camera, I'd love to film something there. And also, I'm hoping eventually, in actually coming over here to your location, I was struck by how sparse this Port Morris area is, and thinking to myself, even if it was just second unit, I think shooting here with a small camera crew of these barren streets, it's like one of the few locations that still hasn't been taken over or redeveloped fully yet. So, fingers crossed, but I think it would make for a really nice visual setting if you present it to an audience, even out of context, and they'll be like, whoa, where's that? And then you'll just, afterwards they'll realize that it's actually still set in New York City and in the Bronx specifically.
Yeah, I think they shot the Penguin not too far from where my mentor used to be, 10 by 10 Studios, Carlos Vito, where also the Port Morris Distillery used to be.
And the Bronx Brewery around here is
Right.
there as
Or
well.
they're right around the corner of
Right
us.
around the corner, yeah. So those are two spots that eventually I'd like to film in, but on a very small scale and not interfering with the fabric of what already exists there.
Gotcha. So it's rapid fire. Zanin, pick up the pace for us, please.
I would say when I was a student at Bronx Community College, I really enjoyed a lot of the locations there. It used to be the old NYU campus
Yeah.
until they decided to leave for, you can fill in the gaps of why. Lehman College, also a very beautiful place. And funny enough, you said Van Cortlandt Park. I actually filmed several things in that deep interior. I also didn't know there was Central Park rocks or stones. That's also a beautiful place. I think one place also that I would like to shoot that I didn't even know existed. It's I believe it's somewhere near like Gun Hill Road, but it's like along the river, and there's like these stone walkways that you can literally walk the length of the river, and it just feels like an entirely different place, and you wouldn't believe that it was in the Bronx kind of thing. And I think that river runs all the way up to like Yonkers, so you could realistically just walk that all the way to Yonkers and have a good time. But I just thought it was like so beautiful and just, I don't know, just abstract. And another place that I would love to film with those adjectives in mind is the New York Botanical Garden. That's
you
the
can
only
afford it.
Yeah. Well,
Steal it.
that's the only one that I would acknowledge as like the New York Botanical Garden. But there's a section where it's like it's a man-made pond pool situation, and it's got these like nice wood, like accented floors that run the length of it into like a meadow area. And I always think, wow, this feels like something like that I would see in like a sci-fi movie. So I would totally, either book a permit. Who knows? Maybe I'll steal a shot. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I like that.
yeah, I like those places.
Cool. I'll be quick with mine. Orchard Beach and the original Little Italy, because I could go in there and be like, I certain lenses or filters. I could be like, this looks like the 70s. Yeah, we're gonna make this look like the 70s. And there's certain awnings and storefronts that certain blocks I could still go like, this is definitely still the 70s. Steal it, make it look nice. Okay, and then next question: what is your favorite film that has a connection to the Bronx? It doesn't have to be from the Bronx. From the Bronx, it could be connected, meaning the filmmaker could be from the Bronx, an actor's in there, or they talk about something in the Bronx in the film. So it doesn't have to be in the Bronx, but it could be somehow connected to the Bronx.
The Warriors.
Yeah, hell yeah. Warriors. I had to.
Who are the Warriors?
I want all the Warriors.
Damn, that's trick for me. Like, Warriors is great. Rumble in the Bronx for sure. But, I would say Stanley Kubrick.
Fuck yeah.
It's like a couple of the movies that he's done, and I always take it upon me to tell people, he's from the Bronx, right?
Yeah,
And
he went to
stuff like that.
Taft.
Yep.
Yeah. We just talked about it in the last episode.
Yeah. So I would say those
For sure. Yep. His film recently, Barry Lyndon, Warner Brothers said, we're going to put this up on our YouTube channel. And they're like, what? You can watch this for free? Like, it's freaking, I was reading a little bit about it. The Zeiss Super Speed lenses was one of the first films, or at least the first film that Kubrick used it on. Then he used it for The Shining. So really terrific stuff. And Scorsese, it's one of his favorite films, and he also connection to the Bronx. I would say Awakenings. It's the year I was born, 1990, and Robin Williams and De Niro, and I just love the films where rest in peace, Robin Williams is serious in. It's really good in it. So certain spots, shot in the Bronx. I believe they used Einstein College. I'll have to look that up. To see if that's correct. But just well-made film. Okay, and then last but not least, what is one thing that you would like to highlight in your next film that maybe is tied to the Bronx?
I'm gonna need to think about that one for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm still in the process of finding a movie theater for that still life project that I was mentioning earlier. But my hope is that once I put out an open call for submissions of for voiceover submissions from anyone that follows me or is in the film sphere, it can be from current Bronx residents or those in the film working environment with some connection to the Bronx to submit something. And I'm looking at you, Greg, as I know you have a great voice, so I'm hoping that we might be able to work something out.
Yes, we
but
can.
there's, to answer your question, that's hopefully what the connection to the Bronx will be in that particular project.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's just I think I struggle with that question a lot, primarily because part of me is self-conscious of being an enabler of certain things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I do, there are places in the Bronx that I know that I would want to capture that will help tell a story and involve characters that are from the area, that kind of stuff. But there's a fear of hyper commercializing the Bronx as a destination for me that then is like, oh my God, like come check this out. And, people will then flock there and like take what they want, but then give nothing back to the community. And so I think that's why I struggle with this question, because I know, like, as a Bronx filmmaker and being from here, there are things that I definitely would absolutely showcase and explore. But as far as like putting all of the best Bronx highlights into this beautiful package, and it's like, yo, check this out. Guess where this was filmed at? The Bronx. I think that's something that I'm still questioning and something that I'm still finding answers to. But yeah,
I love that answer because it's about being intentional and understanding that. And I'll say this: in my last documentary, 1.5 million, we were referencing a specific New York Times article from 2017 where it said, the top 52 places to explore in the United States, and the South Bronx is 51. It's just like, okay, it's real estate. We want to bring tourism and interest to here, and everyone's investing. For my next film, I would like to do the inverse of that and highlight long-standing organizations and potential newcomers, natives who are starting things. So, like, it could be something, and I'll throw out the name now. So, if somebody wants to steal it, by all means, But I'll say this: Bronx founders. So it could be something where people who are founding things and starting things. It's something that I think should be highlighted. That people who look like us are creating things in potentially adverse environments, but also there's so much love within the community because it's why we're here. Joe Conzo Jr., famous photographer who documented a lot of the the first development of hip hop culture in the 1980s, or I would say late 70s, early 80s in the Bronx. He told me recently, like, hey, I moved. Like, why? I moved up north. Why? Because it feels unsafe. I'm like, but you saw history. You went through so much. He's like, I think it's time for change, and it feels like it's worse than it was before. So for those of us who stay, and that could be another title, we have to create, because I drive around here to the studio in Port Morris in the South Bronx, or if I take the bus or I take the train, what do I see on my way over here? A lot of buildings, charter schools, huge housing that's not affordable. So we have to take care of ourselves. So I think that's another thing as a filmmaker. We can, I made a documentary. I feel really good about it, but there's still only one bookstore, and it's just a lot to take in.
yeah.
But on another note, I wanted to take this conversation into really specific in filmmaking. Could you each discuss you were talking about it earlier in screenwriting, but your preferences your comfort, and what is it that you like to do or get out of most in filmmaking? What specific roles, what specific activities, works do you like to really dive into more? What are you looking to develop more? As you're both filmmakers, but what specifically your discipline, your roles that you're looking to get better at or develop more? So you were talking about screenwriting. Could you expand upon that? And if there's any other aspects of filmmaking and roles that you'd like to continue to cultivate and develop?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I was also going on hiatus earlier. Mm-hmm. That is a deliberate choice on my part because I consider it a gross injustice that in this country, I think for as long as Hollywood or even the new Hollywood has existed, the industry is almost run like a meritocracy, and there's still a lot, despite any inroads that the hashtag Oscars So White campaign made a few years ago. There's still a lot of nepotism and gatekeeping. It's just a bit more coded and a little bit more disguised now. So you have to really pay attention to, or maybe it's blatant in front of you, depending on your status as a filmmaker. And I still consider it to be a gross injustice that no matter who's president, our government has never really been set up in a way to enable financial support the way it is in other so-called first world countries, such as or even the UK, mm-hmm. for filmmakers that are up and coming. So there's no way for us outside of like fundraising or spending out of pocket or being lucky enough to have a connection already to the industry to make sure that our projects financially succeed. Often we're on the line for a lot of the expenses. So I lament the fact that we never, that kind of infrastructure doesn't really exist. And because I feel that because my day job is not related to film, and therefore I have to spend some of that operating capital, so to speak, out of my own pocket just to make sure people are fed at least. And we have to cover any vehicle or even equipment rentals. Unless I get like major or suitable financial backing or are lucky enough to win some kind of institutional support, it's just unsustainable in the long run for me to keep putting myself in that line of fire with project after project, or even like doing a feature project piecemeal. So I made a deliberate choice to kind of step back for a little, rediscover what made me passionate about film in the first place, and really commit my efforts to screenwriting with something to say, especially if it's an interesting story idea. So that's why I'm committing right now to do more, to polish up and make this feature idea that I have as the best that it can be. And at the same time, if I see an initiative or an open call for something that's low risk or even experimental, such as this still life type of project, that I'll go ahead and do, because I know, like, I've been doing documentaries 10 years on and off. Yeah. So I'm not new to that, but it's definitely less time consuming and less financially risky than, trying to rally the troops, so to speak, for yet another, commitment, even if it's just running off of favors. Another commitment to do something, and then in the hopes of it getting to a streaming platform or a film festival, which is what I had to endure for like the last fictional project I did, even though it was just a short. So that's what I'm hoping the muscle that I'm hoping to exercise, just better screenwriting, having something to say, and in the meantime, increasing my portfolio, whether it's just like a small, like even a mini a GoPro or a Ray-Ban Meta type of production that I can do for a documentary or an experimental film. And then, sure, if somebody wants to pay me, then I'll commit to doing something creative on that regard. But for now, it's just small scale.
Awesome. Hold on 1 second. I just have to change a camera battery. Okay, and we're back. Just took a little quick break to change a camera battery. So Zanin, same question. Is there anything that you're looking or striving to, and I don't like to say like improve, but I'd say like focus more on, cultivate, develop more as a filmmaker? So.
Yeah. And I think a bit of the first question was like, what is our position?
Oh, sorry, yes. If you can say also, yes. Yeah, what's your position? What's your role? Or what specific roles do you really focus on as a filmmaker?
Yeah, absolutely. Primarily I freelance as a cinematographer, also within the camera world of like camera assisting, second AC. Lately I do a lot of DIT now, and I had just passed the camera assistant test for local 600.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Very exciting stuff. And outside of camera, like I've also done other things. Like I've, been a field sound mixer. I enjoy sound a lot. I'm probably one of the few people in camera world, I would say,
Yeah.
that actually really enjoy doing sound work. And in fact, I'm always communicating with my sound people of like what their needs are when I'm lighting or setting up a shot.
That's a breath of fresh air for them.
Yeah.
Really quick, could you explain what DIT means for our listeners?
DIT is a digital image technician. So their responsibilities can be very expansive to doing like, I want to say like LUTs and media managing and stuff like that, or it could be as simple as data wrangling, which is just backing up your footage on drives and things like that. So it'll really just depend on the production. And then outside of that, I've done a bit of producing. I was even an intimacy coordinator a couple of times, and I just kind of fell into that because I'm very much someone that like believes in communication and safety. And there were a few shoots that I was shooting that it just was not safe at all. And funny enough, coincidentally, when I was falling into IC, it was around the time when IC was becoming a thing and becoming more noticed. So when people were like, "Oh, are you an IC, an intimacy coordinator?" I was like, "Well, I don't know what that means, and what are you referring to?" And then I realized that I was already on my path and got involved in that. Just because if I can improve myself in any given way, why not? Especially if it serves not just the story of film, but also my team. I see film as it's a team, collaborative art. Anyone that can tell you they can do it by themselves, I mean, depending on what the project is, they could. But if you want to make a world where many, many people, regardless of who they are, where they're from, could be a part of, you need a team. And then when other people can see that, then you've succeeded, because it's like, yeah, like this is a world that we're a part of. And yeah, I mean, as far as like improving, I'm always trying to improve myself, whether through my craft and through my relationships with people, things like that. Like Alvaro had said, like being a filmmaker from the Bronx, from the financial background that I'm from, I never thought of a career in film. Like, honestly, it wasn't until I was 23 years old and getting medically discharged from the Marines, from boot camp, that filmmaking as a choice became apparent to me. And I was like, oh, like, this is awesome. Like, I've always loved stories. I've always actually created and imagined worlds. I never just thought of it as a career. And if I was willing to, I don't know, sign my life away, I guess maybe pursuing this isn't as scary, though it is very challenging. And I think what became very apparent to me, having little to no money, is that no one's going to hire me to direct.
Right.
No one's going to hire me to like necessarily write something or whatever. So I had to figure out, okay, well, if this place is truly my calling, film, and it all makes sense of like not just the stories, but just the access to different people and industries, because I'm a life learner and I love to learn. And I know that of everything I've been through in my life, this makes sense. How can I make money to like sustain myself? Mm-hmm. And then that's when I realized that I had to be of like service to productions, to other companies and filmmakers. And so I went up the road of, being a video shooter and, getting skills in that, doing sound and getting the equipment that I'm seeing would actually make the job better, that people want but don't necessarily have the money to afford renting. So I built my career just being indispensable and being a communicator in that regard. And then, now it's like I've been able to reach a point where, yeah, I don't have the money or the backing. I'm not probably going to make a feature film off the whim of a hat, just off of my own financial backings, but because I've helped so many people and garnered success doing it this way, that I'm like now in a position where like I can actually create. And so with the opening of the new studio that I have and my partnership with ProCam USA, I'm finally getting myself ready to start to create. Because believe it or not, like my first film I ever made was in film school, and I've just been freelancing ever since. And so only now I'm finally going back to writing again, and hopefully soon we'll produce a series of shorts.
Ooh.
So yeah.
What was your film from film school? Talk about it.
My film is so funny enough. Like outwardly, people have a lot of ideas of like what I'm into. Like I'm into gaming, and obviously I mentioned the Marine Corps thing, and you mentioned Throg's Neck. I was a volunteer EMS dispatcher in Throg's Neck, so my tastes are all over the place. And my first short film for film school was a romance movie.
Yeah.
So
I think I saw it too.
oh yeah, it was like a romance drama, but like I don't necessarily call it a romance film in the sense that like it's not about him actually getting the girl, although that is this character's motivation, is to get the girl and to overcome his social anxiety. It's actually a disguised story on just finding who you are and your strengths and like what makes you you, and that you can have that confidence to go on to the next challenge and stuff like that. I think in life, like we get caught up on like our struggles and our conflict, and that being our defining character, and that either makes us or breaks us. But in reality, like the real gem is the lesson of like how you deal with that challenge and how you move from that. And I think that, disguised in this romance movie, is what I hoped people took away from it. But again, it was also for film school. So,
Good,
it's corny, but I kind of like it still. As much as I want to tear it apart now, 10 years later,
I was
like,
gonna say.
like, oh, this is so garbage. But then like I play it on for people, and they all react at all the right like emotional moments. I'm like, okay, I guess it does something. But yeah,
I like it. Also, romance is corny. Come on.
yeah. But I blame Disney. Like they got me so caught up of like happily ever after. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be like the great like husband and provider for my kids, and now I'm like, oh shit, this is not what it actually is. How dare you destroy my life before it's even started.
I do like though that you highlighted when even watching it 10 years later, people still react appropriately at the those specific story beats. So that's what it is. So I asked that question to really ask the bigger question of so film is so collaborative. We spoke about this in our previous episode or previous interview, that a filmmaker or director is working with, let's say, a producer. If they've written the script, fine, but they're working with a production designer, sound, camera, working with this entire team to make one project happen. And on a micro budget, most likely, a short film, and you only have like 1 weekend to shoot. You have your day jobs, and it takes months of planning. I asked those questions earlier to get to this main question of, and I love that you said earlier that you've been taking a hiatus to focus on screenwriting, focus on other things. Do you think in the Bronx we need to come together as filmmakers and work on that one major project to kind of, I don't want to say solidify us all, but like to really make a name for ourselves? Do you think that it would require something like that, like the Bronx Filmmakers Collective, the previously Bronx Film 48, Bronx Film Initiative? We have all these nonprofits I can name, Ghetto Film School. Do you think we should all come together, or do you think it's those of us who are now in our 30s coming together and saying, hey, let's make that? If we can't make a feature film on our own, should we come together to make that happen?
I mean, I just want to passionately speak on that in the sense that, well, yeah, we should get together and work together. This is a collaborative art, and we do our best work as a team. In my start in this industry, I found it hard to get experience with my fellow classmates in college, in the Bronx and things like that. And, partly because there is this myth, Alvaro kind of alluded to it before, where it's like meritocracy. And it's also a dream that I believed was how the way the world worked. And it's, you work hard, you dedicate yourself to your task and to your profession, and you will be rewarded. But that's hardly the case, actually. It's going to come down to who you know, nepotism, favoritism. If you have the means to do it, you're going to do it. Like I've noticed, because I never started, like I didn't have camera experience or anything like that when I started. I just kind of went in head first, went into a film program, and I was learning everything for the first time. And I noticed that those that had cameras or had, whatever, they were able to like do stuff. Whereas like me, who just had ideas, they were like, oh yeah, that's cool, but sit down and go over there. It was just like, wow, like, if not me, like who do you think is going to work with you when we're all trying to make a name for ourselves? If you can't work with the people next to you, what makes you think the people above you are going to pick you? And I think that's a delusion that many people still hold on to, and I think that's what makes them more abrasive to wanting to work with others. And then also too, there's like the scarcity mentality of like people who are like, oh well, like I know I'm trying to make a name for myself, but like how many people are there actually that could like work with me and to create the kinds of things that I want to create? And so they believe that talent and expertise doesn't actually exist. Like when I see like film postings or whatever for crews in the Bronx,
Facebook group page, doesn't matter, whatever.
Yeah. Like they're not asking actual people from the Bronx. They're pulling their peoples and homies from Brooklyn or Queens or, from Kansas that transplanted or Cali. It's a shame. So it's a combination of the scarcity mentality. There's the competition aspect of like, well, I want to succeed, and if you succeed, then that means there's no opportunities for me. And we only hurt ourselves in the process because there's so much content to be made. There's so many businesses out there. Like many people can truly succeed if working together. And with these Bronx organizations, because I've been a part of a lot of them, that's just the type of person I am. And I've noticed that they're too busy fighting with themselves. Meanwhile, these developments are coming in. These other people who have the resources that can outpace us, economically, experience-wise or whatever. They're just planting their flag, and they're the go-to spot. They're the, oh yeah, I'm this Bronx production company, whatever. And yeah, everyone else just gets priced out. And so I think that's why it's important, because as a community, we're stronger together. And secondly, if one succeeds, we all succeed. And I'm very big on like mentorship. I'm very big on like uplifting people. And it doesn't matter where they are in their career, whether they're just starting and just trying to figure out like what camera to buy and if Nikon's a good choice.
Sure.
I've been there. Or they're like intermediate and they're like, I've been making a lot of money doing this. Like, what do I do next? So I think it's important. And I think the more that we can break apart those, beliefs of like, success and what that can look like, I think we can start to see more people working together. And I'm starting to see that more as time progresses. But I think we need more people involved in that discussion to say, hey, let's stop the nonsense and like get together and be a team.
Completely agree. Awesome answer. Alvaro, what do you think?
I'm having a hard time remembering the original question. It was about
Oh yeah. So
if it takes a village to make a film, can the
I asked that earlier in terms of getting to this point in the conversation. The main question is, you're speaking to two filmmakers, also film workers. Essentially, we both discussed it's difficult. I may not make this on my own, and you shouldn't. I agree. I would not do 1.5 million again. I did it, and I'm like, great, did that. That took years. That's a lot of money down. But I would love to make a narrative feature. And whenever I go to film festivals and I hear people who, oh, I'm from Tennessee or I'm from here or what have you, it's like, oh, you made your feature in your neighborhood with the people you know. And maybe the actors aren't from that area. Maybe, a certain crew member, but most people are from your neighborhood because they know. And that's how film gets done, in my opinion. So I wanted to ask, how do you feel about the landscape here in the Bronx in terms of what you're trying to do in the future, make projects? Do you think that's something where we need to come together? If so, how to make that feature?
Yeah, I think that kind of piggybacking from Zanin's response, a lot of the tribalism among any organization that wants to get a piece of the pie, so to speak, or think or conflate their relevance with their proximity to either the real estate industry or the Bronx political machine. Like if they feel that their worth is determined by their proximity to either of those, I think that a lot of the tribalism is kind of bound to remain. And the sooner that, let's say, the more progressively minded organizations or even members of those orgs become, the sooner that they let go of that mentality, I think the closer to success in terms of autonomy they'll be. Because I think that there have been, it's kind of in a way tied to the gentrification that the borough underwent over the last decade or so, where certain parties or certain agents might feel that the best way to do changes from the inside, or, well, this is all inevitable, so we might as well participate in our own way and then see what kind of breadcrumbs we get in the process. But I don't really believe in that. I think that there's a smart way to go about it. And just speaking for myself, my aspirations initially were to try and launch through connections or through my own portfolio a sort of film wave that represented my generation, maybe even Gen Z, as a matter of fact, but something similar to the French New Wave or even the kitchen sink movement from Great Britain in the 80s, or even the black indie film movement of the 90s after Boys in the Hood and Just Another Girl on the IRT came out, for example. So my hope was to participate or create in a movement of similar scope. I think a collectively minded mission along those lines will probably enable filmmakers that have a strong affinity for the borough or have a lifelong connection to it, are the agents that will successfully produce a sort of narrative project that even explicitly isn't about the Bronx or isn't another Gun Hill Road or just another girl on the IRT, but something that really embodies the ethos of that indie film spirit, makes something that everyone's proud of and is of the moment, and can be seen or has something to say that resonates with an audience on a large scale. So I think that's really letting go of the tribalism and really recognizing that the stakes are too high to be individually to be individualistic about these things and how much money am I going to get, or no, I want to be protective of my reputation. And we're no, just recognize that for the greater good, some sacrifice is going to be made, and you're ultimately going to be in a better place if you take a creative risk and you support or even donate to something that doesn't doesn't fit maybe your agenda or what your idea of what is flavor of the month at the moment, and instead is something that will have legs long after distribution, long after exhibition, and will ultimately be something that you can look, not just set the stage for the next generation, but can be something that you all look back on and say, wow, we did that. We all came together. We put aside our differences. We know how to work with different personalities, and we really applied the organizing principle to something creative and something long lasting.
Yeah, I love it. Just terrific answers, and it's, not serendipitous, but the event we did October of 2023, like the community event where we had the other organizations, Bronx film organizations, and individuals, kind of like in round tables and at like the main table, like a panel. You two were both there.
Yeah.
So it's just it's about coming together and just having conversations like, how can we work together? Let's do this stuff. So I'll say the same thing I said there. I think we need to do like a Bronx Film Week, where it's kind of like Bronx Week, but it's you go down from Jerry and Cinema on Sound on City Island, go all the way down to where Ninoska is, Mountain Haven Film Festival, and even here, we could do a mixer here and do screenings, either my studio space or Bronx Brewery or something at the bar nearby. But yeah, I think that's what I agree. It's going to take conversations, us coming together and actually collaborating and putting aside any petty, I feel like Zeus from God of War. Put aside the petty grievances that have splintered us for so long. But I want to say thank you both for joining me. I have two last questions that I want to ask you both. First off, what are some resources, or if you could pick one resource if you'd like, for maybe young and aspiring filmmakers that they should be aware of? We spoke recently about Shot Deck and Celtics and things like that. So any particular resources you think young and aspiring filmmakers should be aware of?
Well, I think for starters, the public library, because if you're going to be a writer-director, especially like me, I think it's of critical importance that you dedicate some of your or a significant part of your waking life, not just to production, but to the history, and really sharpening not just your voice, but the talent and the work that came before you and that can inspire you, that came from previous decades. So with a public library card, you can actually, whether or not you're with streaming or pro streaming is irrelevant, but with your library card, you can actually take out old DVDs for free.
Physical media, and just plug it into your computer, your laptop, or your gaming console, and then see some of these older films that are still referenced to this day. Oh, yeah.
Whether it's Lawrence of Arabia inspiring Doom Part 2, or Spike Lee's initial films, like those are all available for free if you have a library card. And chances are that if you have multiple library cards, whatever is missing in one collection, you can go to the Brooklyn Public Library or stick with the New York Public Library or the Queens Public Library. So that's one free resource. And then if you're fresh out of college or you're about to graduate and you want to get some experience, or you just want to increase your network, I think the roster newsletter that is in tandem with Ghetto Film School is something that's available from their website. You can easily sign up for it. It's like the age range between 18 to 34, so you can take advantage of that. And then also look into the Manhattan Neighborhood Network.
Oh, hell yeah. MNN.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like resources, I would even go as far as to say, different types of like YouTube filmmaking channels. I think they're a great way to kind of get a grasp of like certain aspects. I think the downfall of certain YouTube channels, though, and this is where experience and stuff like that comes in handy, is they are heavily focused on selling you on gear, or can lead you down this hole of like, oh, if I don't have this particular lens that opens up to this aperture, I won't be able to get that, cinematic image. So
buttery, creamy bouquet.
Exactly. So yeah, it's like things like that can be tricky. I'd say ignore that aspect, but focus on the other things, especially for learners that do well with like having some kind of hands-on, but some kind of like, visual, sometimes reading things or trying to like go things a more like traditional academic route could be challenging. I know myself, a little fun story. I failed field production in college for that semester. I just couldn't understand it and like what they were talking about.
This is at BCC?
Yeah, BCC. And then during the summer of that same year, I started working doing field production, and I was like, "Oh wait, this makes way more sense. Why didn't they? Why didn't they explain it this way?" I'm like, "What? Like that didn't make sense. This makes sense." And so that's when I realized, okay, like I do better with hands-on, and then asking questions too. I think if there's someone in your immediate life or even just remote, like don't be afraid to ask questions. Like someone had recently told me that one of my superpowers, which I never really considered it one, was that when I'm truly passionate about something, even though I don't know anything about it, and people get into their heads of like, well, I don't want to look like I don't know this thing. I'll just walk up and be like, hey, this is dope. I don't know what it is, but can you like walk me through like what it is you're doing and why you're doing it? And more than often, people will be excited to tell you. And wow, that was such an amazing thing. Talking to people is really important, and then getting that kind of experience. And also too, like, again, like we're talking about resources, but I guess the biggest resource is having that sense of curiosity and drive, because it doesn't matter where that information is. If you have that curiosity and passion and drive, you're going to go to where it is. And so like, yeah, libraries, apps, they have Skillshare, YouTubers, and like all of these places are all valid, but ultimately you need to ask yourself the question of like, is this what I want to do? Am I passionate about this? What do I need to do to pursue it? And like, again, in the cases of what I've been through, there was just the passion and the curiosity and just not being afraid to ask the questions. And also like once I had a better idea of like, hey, like I'm actually curious about like sound, or I'm curious about camera, then hyper fixate on that thing and then volunteer. Like again, I had zero experience with cameras and all this other stuff, but I was the only one volunteering for all the projects. I was like, hey, do you need sound? Hey, I'll do sound. Oh, you need a camera person? I'll do a camera. This guy, one of my close classmates, Carlos Otero, he was an upperclassman. He graduated way before me, so I never had an actual relationship with him. But I remember him reaching out, asking for volunteers for a red carpet press junket. And I volunteered. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then I did it. It was cool. Didn't get paid for it, but I was learning and, figuring things out. And there was this gentleman who was right next to me, who was also at the press junket. And, we headed off, and he gave me his card, but I didn't call him.
No, Zane.
He gave me his card. I didn't call him. I was like, I don't have anything to offer this man. Like, I'm still in school. What do you do? But then days later, I get a call from him. And he's like, hey, man, like, you didn't call. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And then I was honest with him. I was like, look, I'm still in school. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I didn't want to waste your time. And then he goes, nonsense. Listen. Like, he said, nonsense. Listen, come through. Whatever you don't know, we'll work it out together. And that person, his name is Zeze Aquino of Zeze.com. He's an amazing host with U.S. Latino Americans. And he really just lifted me up and got me my first job and really moving along. And a lot of that was because, again, putting myself into places and situations that can be uncomfortable, but because I had that curiosity and passion, landed me down the road of success. So I think big resource, invest in yourself in that curiosity and passion. All the information is out there. You just got to figure out what makes sense for you.
Great story. I love it. Great answers, both of you. Yeah. So lastly, where can people find you? Where can they follow your work, previous work, and upcoming work?
I have a Vimeo channel that's under my birth name, Alvaro Franco. And on Instagram, they can find me at at secular_Jamaco.
And then as for me, they can find me on Instagram, and it has links to all my stuff. So my personal Instagram, which has everything, is zanin.lindsay. And then for my studio that I've opening up, it's 208 Creative Studios. And of course, lastly, for those looking for equipment and rentals, I'm also there and will totally help you out. I'm also at Procam USA.
I love it. And Zanin, definitely want to be invited to the opening, and also BICC needs to collaborate with Procam USA this year.
Hell yeah, we're going to make it happen.
Definitely. Thank you so much, both of you. Terrific episode. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you again.